Our next guest served as Europe's top antitrust cop who took on big tech and won. Joining us right now to talk AI, plus the Iran war and the New World Order, Margrethe Vestager, who served as European Commissioner for Competition and as Executive Vice President of the European Commission. Good morning to you.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Before we get into the AI and tech world,
Yeah.
I actually just want to get your sense of the situation in Iran and what seems to be a divide between so much of Europe, frankly, and the United States right now. What do you think?
Well, I think we view the Iranian regime absolutely the same way. There's no love lost there, full stop. The consequences of the war, they are felt all over the planet. You know, they have an energy crisis in Asia. We see the prices by the pump in Europe going up and up and up. This is not Europe's war. We would much have preferred, what seems to be the case, that there was actually a road to a negotiated outcome to make sure that the Iranians would never, ever get a bomb.
Do you believe that there could be a negotiated outcome at this point? We were talking earlier, Ray Dalio, the hedge fund investor, has made this point that he believes any kind of agreement at this point is going to be worthless. And so ultimately, you effectively have to own the Strait of Hormuz somehow.
Well, that may be, but the road to get to that is really, really troublesome. Because Iran may not have the same assets, obviously not, but they sit on something absolutely crucial for the entire world. And the end game of this is essential, because the sooner this will end, the better for the entire world economy.
That's a question.
For people with the pump,
but that's actually
for people's jobs.
That's a big question about the idea of the sooner the better. Is it the sooner the better under almost any condition, or is it the sooner the better with regime change or something where there's a genuine, meaningful outcome? Or could you think that right now you could say it's won and it's over?
But I think it very much depends. What do you want to achieve? Because I don't know how regime change looks in Iran. I don't know how the end game will actually be. I don't know how a new relationship with Iran and the rest of the world will become. And all that uncertainty is bad, not only for the U.S., it's bad for Europe, it's bad for Asia, even more so because of the energy crisis they have there. It's a global thing. And I think everybody is looking at the U.S. and waiting to see what is the plan, how to end this and what to achieve.
Here's the other piece of it, though. Europe doesn't want to necessarily, it appears, be part of the plan per se, meaning President Trump has said, look, we want your help. And a number of European countries have said, we're not participating in this. And so how do you think that impacts the relationship long term? And do you think that changes?
I think the relationship has been changing for a very long time. And it sort of encourages European leaders to be more and more independent from the U.S. Always in a relationship, because this is the world we live in and this is what we want. But a Europe that is more self-confident, that provides more solutions by itself in technology, in defense equipment, in competitiveness. And I think this is one of the situations that actually pushes that development even further.
So you think this is part of the sort of Mark Carney view of the world that he gave that famous speech in Davos?
I definitely think so, yes.
And you think that's where this is headed? Let me read something that you wrote, and I thought it was interesting. You said, the uncomfortable truth is that the world order was already broken before Trump's first presidency. He didn't create the dysfunction. He just poured gasoline on the fire and accelerated the decline. Is there any way to fix that?
Well, this should be what we were doing right now. Because before the first Trump presidency, you know, there was legitimate criticism of the Western world order by what we call the Global South. The WTO didn't really work. The UN was not the peace promoter that it should have been. So, of course, we needed a new world order. But right now, we're not approaching a new world order. There is a war that affects everybody. Look at artificial intelligence. We were on a road led by the Japanese in the G7 context to have an ambitious common approach to the most, wild risks of AI in order to use it constructively. All of that doesn't happen right now. And that could be the building stone of a new world order, because this is something that we ought to all agree on.
Let me ask you about competition in AI, because one of the things that's clearly happening is to be successful in AI, you need a lot of capital. and a lot of money to be able to build these data centers. And as a result, you have, for the most part, either these big incumbents, the hyperscalers, if you will, and then you have the OpenAIs and Anthropics who effectively have massive their stakes, meaning ownership stakes, from all the other big players because they need the money. Long term, do you think that there's going to be extraordinary competition in this space? Or do you say to yourself, this is by default has to be a concentrated business because it's like a utility in the end? And we were talking about Jeff Bezos had a line where he said AI is going to be like fire. It's that important, but it also is going to be sort of built into everything.
Yeah, I agree that it's that important. And because it's that important, you need to have many more sources than the very few that we have right now. You need European AI, you need U.S. AI, you need Chinese, you need Indian AI. You need more sources in order not to be locked in. Because if we have a future where basically Anthropic, OpenAI, they become the internet, then competition will be lost.
Okay, but here's a question. You're a regulator in Europe. Why has Europe not succeeded in creating a massive new player in this space? Mistral is probably the closest to that. In the tech space, you could say Spotify. But there are not a laundry list of them. And part of the question is that a function of overregulation in Europe?
Actually, it's a function of not providing a market. It's sort of the old capitalistic ingredients in success: market, huge market access, and access to capital. And you know, this is the thrive in Europe to make this happen, because this was why we lost the first round of, you know, big tech emerging, that the market was fragmented and capital couldn't see all these startups, all these amazing entrepreneurs. You just have very recently a European startup being sold to a US company. And that traffic, you know, need to be stopped, but only if Europe can provide one market.
Joe's got a question back in the studio. Joe?
I did. Just listening, I just don't know whether I'm hearing it in a certain way because of where I sit and where I stand, Commissioner, but is there any sense in Europe that this is almost a continuation of Europe being able to benefit from all the hard work the United States does for global security? And I'm thinking about NATO, I'm thinking about energy, I'm thinking about everything else, drug development. It seems like Europe is able to benefit from all these things that the United States does, never has to make any hard decisions themselves, but benefits from everything that the United States does. It sort of comes riding in when everything's finished and is in a much better position. Could that happen again here with no help whatsoever from Europe?
I don't see it that way. Because U.S. companies have made.
I heard you. Yeah. I think a lot of us see it that way. And you know, you have a much bigger social safety net. I mean, I don't know what Germany did with energy and everything else. You get in this horrible position. Many times you're bailed out by the U.S., and it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of gratitude.
Well, there's a lot of gratitude. I'd say that, because there's an 80-year-long friendship between the U.S. and Europe. There's very, very close connections. I'm in the U.S. right now because I believe in this. There's a lot of gratitude. And the thing is that when you look at how that relationship has developed, there's also been a wish of keeping Europe down. That was never, ever an idea that Europe should be a strong power. So I think that combination of sort of being slipped into dependencies and at the same time being a very important market and a very important partner, I think that relationship is much more complex than just saying you all benefited, because Europe delivered as well. You know, when NATO delivered Danish soldiers, they were killed. And I think that is really important in order not to say this can just be seen one way, because there are many more ways. And I think it's beneficial for the entire planet if Europe is more independent, not only from the US, but also from Chinese supplies and definitely from Russian energy sources, because that is just, you know, enabling that war on Ukraine, which is basically also a war on Europe.
But can I say, before we go, do you think that Europe ultimately can be more independent? And I ask because I think, as Joe was reflecting, so much of the security, frankly, that the U.S. has provided, the subsidies for drugs. I mean, all sorts of things. If you were to take some of those things away, it becomes much more complicated, much more quickly. And then the question is not so much can you be independent, but whether you end up partnering, frankly, with China, which is something that Mark Carney suggested in Davos.
I think the point is what you say, to be more independent, because this is not an idea that Europe should do everything by itself. This is a way to say, well, in an equal partnership, well, we have strength too. And I think that is the way that Europe will go, recognizing, obviously, that when it comes to playing a fuller role within the NATO framework, that will take some time.
Commissioner, thank you for joining us.
It was a pleasure.
It's great to see you. Appreciate it.